Hello everyone, this is James. I hope you're doing well and safe during COVID times. I'm going to bring you along on a little adventure in building my virtual lab using Workstation 16 or VMware Workstation 16. In this lab, I'm going to demonstrate a few things, such as build a Windows 10 and Windows 2016 server machine, configure a static IP address for the server, and I'm going to rename both of the machines, add roles and features to the server like Active Directory, DHCP, Netframework 3.5, and then I'm going to promote the server to a domain controller and then add a new forest. Then lastly, I'm going to connect the Windows 10 machine over to the new domain. I do apologize in advance if there's any external noises or some things that may pop up on my screen during this recording. But with that being said, let's go ahead and get to work. So first, we're going to go ahead and start with the Windows 10 machine. So we're going to go ahead and create a new virtual machine. Hit typical is already selected for us. Go ahead and hit next. Then go to the ISO image. And we're going to browse for that Windows 10 ISO image, which is right here. And it is a 64-bit. Going to hit next. And then we are going to give it a machine. So Windows 10 machine. So it looks like this is already in use as far as the name. So what we're going to do to mitigate that, we're going to go ahead and highlight, copy the C path, go to the Files Explorer, copy and paste. And it should be, yep, here it is, all right here. So we're going to go ahead and delete that. That should work. Perfect. So the recommended size is 60 gigabytes, which I'm going to leave alone. And then we're going to go ahead and store virtual disk as a single file. Hit next. And then we're going to go into customize hardware to give it some RAM. So I'm going to go ahead and give it 8. Close it out, and then hit finish. And then it's going to go ahead and create this virtual 10 machine. Just give it a second. And it is going to power it on automatically. Great. So while that's working, we're going to go ahead and start with the 2016 server. So go to File, Create New Virtual Machine. So we're going to start over again as far as the process. So we are going to hit Typical, click Next. Then instead of instead of putting the ISO image in here first, we're actually going to go and install the operating system later. And the reason why we do that is because you'll run into this problem. If you were to select the ISO image now, you have to put in the product key. So to circumvent that, we're going to go ahead and install the operating system later. Hit next. Then we're going to line it up with the version that we downloaded, which was the Windows 10, or excuse me, the Windows 2016 server. So it is Microsoft Windows as far as operating system. And for the version, we're going to match that up. Windows Server 2016. Hit next. Give it a name again, so Windows Server 2016 machine. So again, it is this name is in use. So we're gonna go ahead and highlight the C path, copy it, go into the File Explorer, copy and paste, and then delete. Hit next. So I'm going to give it a little bit more. I'm going to go ahead and give it 80 gigabytes, and then again store virtual disk as a single file. Hit next. Customize the hardware. I'm going to give it some RAM. I'm going to give it 8. Close it out. Hit finish. And then we have to go back and install the ISO image because we ran into that problem. So to circumvent that, we're going to go ahead and edit virtual machine settings. Go to CD DVD. Use ISO image. Browse. I have it saved in the folder. So ISOs. Select the 2016 server. Hit OK. And then we're going to power this on. So while that's going, I'm going to go ahead and swing back to the Windows 10 machine. Get this started. So we're going to hit next. Hit install now. Then this is going to take some time, so please bear with me. So I don't have a product key. We are going to use the Windows 10 Pro version. Hit next. We're going to accept the terms. Hit next. And then I'm going to set custom because this is not an upgrade. So this is like as if it's brand new, the first time we're setting up this this PC. So we're going to go ahead and custom. And remember, I did give it 60 gigabytes, so it's already selected. We're going to hit next. And then it's going to go ahead and install what it needs to install. Swing back over to the 2016 machine, which is pretty much the same process. Hit next, install now. And then we're going to select the Windows Server 2016 standard evaluation. The desktop experience, which has the GUI, which is the graphical user interface. So we're going to hit next. Accept the terms, hit next. Again, this is not an upgrade. It's the first time, so we're going to hit custom. And I did give it 80 gigabytes, which aligns. Hit next. Then it's going to go ahead and install what it needs to install. So this is going to take some time. So what I'll do, I'll go ahead and see you in the next clip. All right, so now that everything is done installing, I'm going to start with the Windows Server 2016. So I'm going to go ahead and give it a password, which is an uncrackable password, which will be capital P password 123 123, and then we go ahead and hit finish. Then I'm gonna swing back over to the Windows 10 machine, and I'm gonna go ahead and finish setting this up. So it is I am in the United States. This is a US keyboard. We're gonna skip that. And take its time, because it does have an important setup to do. Let's see what's new from Windows. All right, so from here, typically I would go ahead when setting up a new machine or desktop, I would use this feature, or I would set up with personal use. But for this demonstration, since we are going to connect this machine over to the new domain, I'm going to go ahead and set up for an organization. Hit next. And then in bottom left corner, like I mentioned before, so we're going to do, instead of signing in, we're going to connect this to a domain, so domain join instead. And for this name, I'm going to go ahead and give it a name, so James, which is me. Hit next. And then password, I'm gonna go ahead and leave it blank. The reason why I'm gonna leave it blank is because just in case we need to troubleshoot this PC out of the domain administrative account, that's why I'm gonna leave it blank for now, just for this demonstration. So again, I'm gonna leave this blank and hit next. We're gonna accept. Nope. Don't need Cortana for this demonstration, so we're not now. Okay, cool. So now that this is going, swinging back over to the, because this is going to take some time, I'm going to swing over to the server. I'm going to log in. Yeah, server manager should pop up any moment. Perfect. So now that this is all loaded, booted up to go, what I'm going to do is next, I'm going to go ahead and rename both of these machines. For the server, I'm going to go ahead and set a static IP address. Now that everything is set and ready to go, before setting the static IP address for the server, typically you would want to install all the updates just as a security standpoint, so you don't want to run into any problems down the line. But just for this this demonstration, just wanted to mention that. So first, I'm going to go ahead and actually rename this PC first. So we're going to go to the Start button here, right click, and then go to System, and see this weird name that it has. We're going to go ahead and change that. So we're going to go to Change Settings, hit Change again. Now we're going to name this Server 2016. Hit OK. And when you rename, when you rename anything, it typically, it's going to automatically have to ask you to restart. So we hit OK. So instead of restarting now, I need to reset, or excuse me, I need to set the static IP address. So we're going to go ahead and restart later. Get out of that. go to the search bar, and we're going to run the command prompt. So I would go ahead and search CMD. So from here, we want to see the IP settings for this machine. So there's two ways you can do that. One would be IP config, which gives you a very brief overview of the IP settings for this machine. But if you want a way more in-depth look at the IP settings, we're going to go ahead and clear this out. And you can run, the second command you can run is ipconfig/all, which gives you a way more in-depth look at the IP settings. So with that being said, set this static IP address. There's just a few things I'm going to go ahead and highlight, which would be the IPv4 address, which would be right here, subnet mask, the default gateway, which is our router, and then the DNS server, which looks like our router. So now that I have all that set, I'm going to go ahead and go to this icon right here, the network internet access icon, right click that, open network and sharing center, change adapter settings. On Ethernet 0, you're going to right click, go to properties, and I'm going to go ahead and deselect IPv6 because we're not using that for this demonstration. We're going to use IPv4, so we're double click that, and they're going to use the following IP address. So from the information that we have over here, which our IPv4 address is 192.168.194.128. So we'll go ahead and input that. So it'll be 192.168.194.128. Subnet mask is 255.255.255.0, which is here, 255.255.255.255.0. And then for the default gateway, which is right here, which is our router, so 192.168.194.2. It would be 192.168.194.2. Now for the preferred DNS server, which would be right here, the DNS servers, which is going to be our default gateway. Instead of using that, I'm going to go ahead and use our IP address, so which would be 192.168.194.128. Instead of using that or inputting that, I can go ahead and use the loopback ping, which would be 127.0.0.1, which would always be, which is the local host. So it's going to go ahead, and what that does is going to go ahead and look for this IP address. I could put that there, but I'm just going to go ahead and leave this here. So the DNS server pretty much is a domain name system. And what that does is it's a server that translates the domain names such as google.com, yahoo.com, bing.com, and it translates that into an IP address which the web browsers can read. So that's pretty much what it does. And then we're going to go ahead and give it a alternate DNS server. So we're going to use Google, so 8.8.8.8. Just in case this fails for whatever reason, it uses the backup. So the alternate DNS server, which would be Google's. So we're going to go ahead and hit OK. Okay, again, I'm going to close this stuff out. And then go ahead and restart. Now that's restarting, let's go ahead and swing over to the Windows 10 machine. So we're going to go ahead and rename this PC as well. Right click, start button, hit system. And then we're going to scroll down, rename this PC. We're going to name this desktop-01. The reason why I name it desktop-01 is because trying to simulate myself in a work environment where I'm setting this up as a new PC. So I don't know how big the company is or how many desktops that's included. So just to be organized, it could be, multiple computers, desktops, or it could be 001, which, could be a lot of PCs in the organization. So just for this demonstration, I'm going to name it 01. Hit next. Then again, it's going to go ahead and ask to restart. So we'll go ahead and restart now. So now that's restarting. Let's go back to the Windows Server machine. Log in. Server Manager is going to pop up again, and then now that everything is done here, I'm going to go ahead and add the roles and features. So before adding the roles and features, such as Active Directory, DHCP, Netframework 3.5, I'm going to go ahead and take a snapshot of these machines. So what a snapshot is what it does is it preserves the state and the data of this virtual machine, all the configurations leading up to now at this point in time. So if you were to experience a problem, or say like a virus happens, you get malware, or you don't know what that problem is and you can't troubleshoot it, so we can go ahead and go back to the previous snapshot with all the working configurations at this point in time. So I'll go ahead and show you. So we're going to go ahead and right click this tab, snapshot, take a snapshot, and we're going to give it a name. So we can go fresh install server 2016, and then for the description I'll just put that renamed server and configured the IP or configured with a static IP address. So we'll go ahead and take that snapshot, and then for the Windows 10 machine, likewise, take snapshot, fresh Windows 10 machine, renamed we'll go ahead and rename this PC desktop-01. Take that snapshot. So just in case if we're running into problems down the road, we can't troubleshoot it and we don't know. So instead of having to have all that time being put to figure out what the problem is, we can just go back to the previous configuration, which is everything that we did up to this point. So going back to the server, we're going to add these roles and features. There's two ways you can do it. You can do it here, or you can go into tools, or it's not tools, we can go to manage and add roles and features. So we're going to hit next. So then you're going to select role base or feature based installation. Hit next again, hit next one more time, and then we're going to look for Active Directory domain services, which is here. We're going to check that box, add these features, hit next. We're going to go ahead and enable Netframework 3.5 features. So what this is it allows for older programs to be used, such as like a time clock. So we're going to go ahead and hit next again, and then we're going to go ahead and hit install. So this is going to take some time, but once this is done, we're going to go ahead and promote this to a new to a domain controller. So now that everything is done installing, we're going to go ahead and promote this to a new domain controller, or to a domain controller. Then we click that, so we're going to add a new forest. So we're going to go ahead and put my name, so James Triplet.local. Hit next. And then we're going to get it set a password once it's done. So we're going to use our uncrackable password again, which will be password 123. Password 123. I'm going to go ahead and hit next. Hit next again, and the NetBIOS name will pop up in a second. So going back to that snapshot, if you wanted to go ahead and revert back, you can go ahead and right click any of these two tabs or your virtual machines, go to snapshot, and then you can revert back to that previous configuration before we did everything that we're doing now. Or you can go ahead and do to the snapshot manager, and it'll tell you where you are, and then this would be the previous snapshot of all the configurations that we did at that time. So that it's pretty cool if anything were to happen. So that's why we do snapshots. So we're gonna go ahead and close that, hit next. hit next again. Next one more time. And then it's going to go through all of its checks. And then once it's done checking, then we're going to go ahead and hit install. Then I believe this is going to take some time. Oh, no. Oh, yeah, it's going to take some time. So I'll go ahead and see you in a bit. Okay, so now that it's done, we're going to go ahead and log back into the server 2016. All right. So let's see here. We go ahead in the tools. We can also view. We can view. Okay, Active Directory. Users and computers are here. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back and add the DHCP. So we can go ahead and sign that DHCP server pool of IP addresses. So we're going to go to add roles and features again. Hit next. Select role-based or feature-based installation. Next again. Hit next. And right here, DHCP, we're going to check that. Add these features. Hit next. Hit next again. Hit next. I'm going to go ahead and hit install. So for this DHCP, or the dynamic host configuration protocol, what that does is it's a server that leases out unique IP addresses, and those unique IP addresses have a certain amount of time before they expire. So it could be anywhere between seconds, minutes, days, or even weeks. So it just depends, and I'll go ahead and get into that in a bit. So that's what DHCP does, the dynamic host configuration protocol. So what I did in the beginning to sign a static IP address, or to reserve an IP address, we didn't want to go ahead and let it automatically assign us an IP address, because that's dynamic, right? Dynamic means it's subject to change. So we didn't want that. We wanted to go ahead and sign this this server a static IP address, or to preserve an IP address, so that way it's always, no matter how many times it's going to reboot, it's always going to be assigned the same IP address. And the reason why we want that is because if we have all these other computers that want to connect to our domain, and if this server always has a changing IP address, you have to go to every computer. You're just going to run into problems, right? So to avoid those problems, so we don't have to go ahead and change it on every computer, or configure the IP address on every computer, we're just going to leave it as a static IP address. So now that that's done, we're going to go ahead and close it. Then we're going to go into Tools, go to the DHCP. Just make this a little bit bigger. Move this over, and then we're going to go to this server right here. Drop that down, select IPv4, right click it, because we're going to give it a new scope. Hit New Scope, and then we're going to go ahead and hit Next. And then for the name would be the domain, so jamestriplet.local. Hit Next, and this is where we're going to go ahead and configure, or give it a pool of IP addresses to assign. So from here, I'm going to go ahead and give it 192.168.194.100 to start, and then to end 192.168.194.200. Right. Let's go ahead and hit Next. Hit Next. So this is where I was talking about for how long, right, the lease it's gonna expire. So that could be minutes, it could be hours, it could be days, or it could be weeks, right? So 2 weeks. So we'll just go ahead and leave it at 14. Hit Next. So we do want to configure these options down. Hit Next. Hit Next again. Hit Next. Next. And we do want to activate this scope now. Finish. So now that that's done, I'm going to go ahead and connect the Windows 10 machine over to the new domain. We're going to go ahead to the Windows 10 machine. We're going to go ahead and connect this over to the domain controller. But before that, we're going to go ahead and connect this over to the DNS server. So we're going to go ahead to the Internet Access, right click that, open Network Internet Settings, go into Ethernet, change adapter options, go into Ethernet 0, right click that, go into Properties. Again, I'm going to go ahead and disable that or deselect that because we're not using that for this purpose. We're going to go to IPv4 and go over to the DNS server. So we're going to go ahead and use that same DNS server or the IPv4 address for that server, which was 192. Oops, let me go ahead and enable this numlock. So it'll be 192.168.194.128. Hit OK. Or, you know what? Let me go ahead and add, just in case, you never know. Alternate DNS server, so 8.8.8.8. Hit OK. Okay. Exit that out. And then I'm going to go ahead and start from the beginning. So now we're going to go ahead and connect this over to the new domain. Right click the start button, go to system, and the search. I'm going to go and type in domain, which would be access, school, or work, and hit connect. And then right down here, we're going to join this device to a local Active Directory domain. And for the domain name, it'll be .local. So it'd be the username would be administrator. The password, which was password 123. And then we'll go ahead and for this, we'll go ahead set it as an administrator account. So we hit next, and then we're going to restart now. And as that's restarting, as that's going to go, let's go ahead and verify that it has been connected to the new domain. So now that we're back on the server, we're going to go to Tools. We're going to open up Active Directory users and computers. And right here, this domain, we're going to go into computers. And there it is. It has been verified that the desktop 01 has been added, or this Windows 10 machine has been added over to the new domain or the domain controller. So with that being said, let me go ahead and recap. So we went over building the Windows 10 and Windows 2016 server machine, configuring the static IP address for the server and rename both machines, add roles and features to the server like Active Directory, DHCP, or the Dynamic Host Configuration Protocol, and we gave it a pool of IP addresses. And then I enabled the other feature, which would be the Netframework 3.5, promoted the server to a domain controller, and then added a new forest, which was jamestriplet.local. Then lastly, I connected the Windows 10 machine over to the new domain, which has been verified here. So I want to go ahead and thank you guys for coming along with me on this little adventure and building my own virtual machine, or virtual lab, I should say. Just to demonstrate some of the things that I've learned, some of the IT skills that I've learned here in this demonstration. And then I just want to thank you again. Thank you for coming along. Hope you stay safe. Hope you stay healthy during these COVID times, which is these unprecedented times, if you want to go ahead and say that. But anyways, I hope you guys take care, and I will see you down the line.